What if I told you that sometimes, when you're at your absolute lowest point, when you've literally got $3 in your pocket and 3 hungry kids asking for dinner, that's exactly when your life is about to change forever? Meet Sarah Mitchell. She's 34 years old and she hasn't had a good night's sleep in what feels like forever. But not because she's worried about anything dramatic or exotic. She's worried about basics, the kind of stuff most people never think twice about. Sarah lives in Maple Grove, Ohio, a quiet, hardworking town about 20 minutes outside Columbus. It's the kind of place where families have lived for generations, where people know their neighbors and look out for each other, or at least they used to. These days, Sarah feels like she's living on an island, completely isolated, even though she's surrounded by people. The thing about Sarah is that she wasn't always struggling. 5 years ago, she had a decent job at a marketing firm, a small apartment with her 2 kids, and a plan. She was doing it. She wasn't rich, but she was okay. Then her husband left, just walked out one morning without much explanation, and the second kid was a surprise that came about 6 months after that. He took a different path, found someone else, and stopped sending child support about 2 years ago. Sarah's never quite recovered from that. For the last 3 years, Sarah's been on and off jobs, retail, cleaning houses, waitressing. Nothing stuck because it's hard to keep consistent work when you don't have reliable childcare and you're constantly stressed about how you're going to feed 3 kids on minimum wage. That minimum wage job doesn't exist anymore anyway. She got fired from her last position at a grocery store distribution center 2 months ago when her mother, the person who watched the kids, had a stroke. Sarah had to take time off. By the time her mom was stable, Sarah's job wasn't waiting. That brings us to today. It's a Tuesday morning in late September, and Sarah is sitting in her kitchen with her 3 kids. Marcus, who's 8, Lily, who's 6, and little Danny, who just turned 4. The kitchen is modest, clean but worn. The cabinets are from the 90s. The linoleum is peeling slightly near the sink, and there's not much in those cabinets anyway. Sarah's staring at her phone, which shows her bank account balance, $4.67 for 4 people. For the week, maybe longer. She looks at her kids eating cereal, the off-brand kind, the big bag that costs $1.50, and she tries to smile, but it's hard. It's so hard. "Mommy, can we have milk with it?" Danny asks, holding up his bowl with the gentle hope that only a 4-year-old can have. Sarah reaches for the milk jug. It's almost empty. She pours just a little bit for each of them, making it stretch, making it last. She's gotten really good at making things stretch. Marcus, who's old enough to understand more than Sarah wishes he did, watches his mom. He doesn't say anything. He just watches. The phone rings. Sarah almost doesn't answer because she knows who it probably is. Her landlord, probably. Or one of the utility companies. But something makes her pick it up. Is this Sarah Mitchell? A man's voice. Professional? Unfamiliar? Yes, this is she, Sarah says, her stomach already tightening. This is Timothy Schulman from Schulman's Hardware and Feed Supply down on Main Street. I'm calling because I've had my eye on you, actually, and I'd like to talk to you about a job opportunity. Are you available to come by this afternoon? Sarah's confused. She doesn't know Timothy Schulman. She's never even been in that store. It's an old-school hardware place that's been around since like the 50s. Yes, I'm sorry, who is this again? How did you get my number? A friend of a friend, Timothy says. But trust me, you'll want to come by. 3 o'clock work for you? Sarah says yes. She hangs up. She sits there for a moment, the bowl of cereal in front of her, her kids asking if they can watch cartoons, and she feels something she hasn't felt in a long time. She feels curious. She feels something like hope. Maybe it's just a coincidence. Maybe it's nothing. But in that moment, sitting in her small kitchen in Maple Grove, Ohio, with her kids and $4.67 in her bank account, Sarah doesn't know that she's standing at the edge of everything changing. She doesn't know yet, but she's about to find out. Sarah showed up to Schulman's Hardware and Feed Supply at 2:47 p.m., 5 minutes early, wearing the nicest thing she had, a black blouse that was slightly wrinkled because her iron didn't work anymore, but she'd done her best. She'd left the kids with her neighbor, Mrs. Chen, who watched them sometimes for free, and Sarah always felt guilty about it. The store was exactly what she expected. Old wooden floors, creaky, narrow aisles packed with everything from paint to seed to hand tools. It smelled like sawdust and metal and something else, something like memory. The owner, Timothy Schulman, was standing near the counter when she walked in. He was probably in his 60s, maybe early 70s. with gray hair and the kind of weathered face that comes from someone who's worked outside his whole life. He was wearing a simple button-up shirt with the store's logo on it, and when he saw Sarah, he smiled like he'd been expecting her. "Sarah, right? Come on back to my office for a minute." His office was small and cluttered in a comfortable way. Photos of the store over the decades on the walls, family pictures, awards from the Chamber of Commerce. Timothy gestured to a chair, and Sarah sat down, nervous. "So," Timothy began, settling into his own chair behind an old wooden desk, "I'm going to be honest with you right from the start, because I think you deserve that. I know who you are. Not personally, but I know about you." Sarah's eyes went wide. "What do you mean?" "My wife, Margaret, she runs the youth program at the community center. She knows people, talks to people. She mentioned to me recently that there's a woman in our community. Smart, hardworking, 3 kids, having a really rough go of it. That's you, right?" Sarah felt her face get hot. She didn't like the idea of people talking about her situation, but she also kind of understood that this is what happens in small towns. People know things. "I was in your situation once," Timothy continued. "Not exactly, but I know what it's like to be desperate. When I was 30, I was completely broke. My father had just died, I had some debts he left behind, and I couldn't find work. I almost gave up, but someone gave me a chance. Just like I'm going to give you one." He leaned back in his chair. "I need someone to run the front of this store 3 days a week to start, and I need someone who's reliable and sharp. The job pays $13 an hour, but I also need someone reliable to help me manage inventory and do ordering, which is something I'm going to train you to do. That part is flexible. We can do it whenever you need to, including evenings after your kids are in bed, if you want. That part will pay $16 an hour. You do the math." Sarah was doing the math. Even just 3 days a week at $13 an hour, that was $39 a day, and that was already so much more than she had right now. But the other part too, the possibility of more, she could barely speak. "Why would you do this for someone you don't know?" Timothy smiled, and it was a kind smile, genuine, "Because someone did it for me. And because my wife told me that you volunteered to help clean up after the community center's event last month, and you brought 3 dozen cookies you'd baked yourself, even though everyone knew you didn't have much. That kind of character doesn't come from privilege, Sarah. It comes from something deeper. That's the kind of person I want working in my store." Sarah felt tears starting, and she willed them back. She couldn't cry here. Not now. "When can I start?" "Tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. I'll teach you the register, the inventory system, everything you need to know." "Fair?" "Fair," Sarah whispered. She left that store in a daze. She got back to Mrs. Chen's house, picked up her kids, and drove home in her 2006 Honda Civic that had roughly 1,000 warning lights on the dashboard, and she thought about what just happened. A job. An actual job. Maybe 2 different job responsibilities. She kept doing the math over and over in her head, and the numbers kept changing her mind about how much hope was actually allowed right now. That night, Sarah made a real dinner for the first time in weeks. She went to the grocery store with her $4.67. Plus, she used an old gift card she found in a drawer that had $12 on it. With that $16, she was able to buy chicken breasts, rice, vegetables, and the ingredients for a simple chocolate cake from scratch. As her kids ate around the table, Marcus looked at his mom and asked, "Why are you smiling so much?" Sarah didn't know how to explain that sometimes a smile is so big you can't contain it, that sometimes hope is a physical thing that has to live somewhere, and her body was the only place she had to put it. The next 2 months were transformation in real time. Sarah started at Schulman's Hardware. She picked up shifts. She was incredible at the job. Timothy could tell that people trusted her, that she cared about helping customers, that she wasn't just showing up for the paycheck. She was showing up because it meant something to her to do her job well. After about a month, Timothy called her into his office again. "You're doing really well, Sarah. Really well. And I want to expand your hours. How do you feel about becoming full-time? 5 days a week, benefits after 90 days, and I want to make you my assistant manager. That comes with a raise to $18 an hour, plus I'll give you the flexibility you need with your kids." Sarah didn't cry this time. She was too stunned. Full-time work, $18 an hour. That was life-changing. That was not just surviving anymore. That was the beginning of actually living. She accepted immediately. Things started to shift. She was able to catch up on some bills. She got her car fixed. She started seeing a therapist through a community mental health program because the stress of the last few years had kind of broken something inside her that needed repair. Her mother's recovery accelerated when Sarah seemed less stressed, less desperate. The kids were doing better in school because Sarah had the energy to help them with homework again. November came, and it was getting cold. Sarah realized she didn't have proper coats for the kids. She had thin jackets, and winter in Ohio is no joke. She was saving money, but slowly. She was thinking about how to make it work when there was another unexpected phone call. This time it was from St. Andrew's Church, the big church in town that she'd never been to. A donation had been made in her name, $1,000, to go toward whatever her family needed most right now. They needed to verify her address to deliver it. Sarah asked who made the donation. It was anonymous, the church secretary said. Sarah's hands were shaking when she hung up that phone. Anonymous? Someone had given her $1,000, and she didn't even know who. That wasn't just money, that was freedom. That was coats for the kids, a cushion in the bank account, the ability to breathe. She told Timothy about it at work the next day. She was just making conversation, still amazed and confused. Timothy listened, and then he said something strange. "Well, that's good then." "That's real good, Sarah. I'm glad things are working out for you." But he said it in a way that made Sarah wonder if Timothy knew something. Something about that donation. Something about how her life had suddenly started turning around. Sarah never asked. Some mysteries, she figured, were meant to stay mysteries. But she was about to get her answer anyway, in a way she never expected. Winter came hard that year. It was January, and Maple Grove was buried under snow, the kind of snow that makes a small Ohio town feel even smaller, even more isolated, more like a world unto itself. Sarah had been working at Schulman's for almost 5 months now. She was saving money. The kids had proper coats. There was food in the cabinets. For the first time in years, Sarah wasn't calculating every dollar just to survive. She was actually planning. She was thinking about things like maybe getting the kids into soccer league next spring, or saving up for a summer vacation to visit her sister in Michigan. Life wasn't perfect, but it was good. It was stable. It was something she could build on. It was a Tuesday evening when Timothy called Sarah at home. This was unusual. They didn't really talk outside of work. "Sarah, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Are you doing okay? Like really okay? Be straight with me?" Sarah was confused. "Yes, I think so. Why? Is something wrong? Do you want me to work more hours or—" No, nothing like that. I need to tell you something, and I don't know how you're going to react. But I think you deserve to know the truth." Sarah's stomach twisted. The truth. Those 2 words can change everything. "That donation from the church," Timothy said. "The $1,000. What about it?" "It wasn't anonymous." "Well, it was technically, but it came from someone you know. Someone who's been watching out for you." "Who?" Sarah's voice was small. There was a long pause. "Your ex-husband, James." The words didn't make sense for a moment. They just sat there in Sarah's brain, refusing to arrange themselves into something coherent. James? The man who hadn't sent child support in 2 years? The man who had basically disappeared from their lives? I don't understand," Sarah said. "About 6 months ago, James reached out to me. We went to school together. Did you know that? He was in my grade at Maple Grove High. Well, he looked me up on Facebook and reached out because he said he'd moved back to Ohio and he'd heard that his family, his kids specifically, were struggling. He asked me if I could discreetly keep an eye on things. See how you were doing." Sarah sat down. She actually sat down on the floor of her kitchen because her legs didn't feel like they could hold her. He wanted to help, but he knew you wouldn't accept help from him directly. So he asked if I would give you a job. He actually paid me back for your salary, Sarah. Partially, anyway. He didn't want to just hand you money directly because he knew that would make you angry. But he wanted to make sure you were okay, that the kids were okay. "This is insane," Sarah whispered. That doesn't make sense. Where has he been? Why is he doing this now?" "I think you need to talk to him," Timothy said quietly. "He's been waiting for you to get to a stable place before he made contact. He didn't want to disrupt things. But he also didn't want you struggling anymore." Timothy gave Sarah a phone number. Not an address, not a name, just a number. Sarah just stared at it for a long time after she hung up the phone. She didn't call him that night. She almost called the number at least 17 times. She actually picked up her phone that many times and then put it down again. She was angry. She was confused. She was grateful. She was furious. She was all of those things at once. The next day at work, Timothy asked if she'd called. She hadn't. "I think you should," he said gently. People deserve second chances, Sarah, even people who've messed up pretty badly. That night, Sarah called. James answered on the second ring like he'd been sitting by the phone waiting. "Hello? It's me. It's Sarah." There was such a long pause that Sarah thought maybe he'd started crying. "Hi," he finally said. "Hi, I wasn't sure you'd call. I wasn't sure you'd ever want to talk to me again." They talked for an hour. James explained that he'd been in a dark place for years after he left. Addiction, poor choices, depression, the works. He'd finally gotten himself into treatment about 18 months ago. He got sober. He got therapy. He started to actually process what he'd done to his family. And the realization was crushing. "I couldn't face you directly," he told Sarah. "I knew you had every right to hate me. But I couldn't stand the thought of my kids hungry. I couldn't stand it. So when I found Timothy on Facebook and he told me the situation, I had to help, even if I couldn't take credit for it." "Why would you do that?" Sarah asked. "Why would you help me without letting me know?" "Because I didn't deserve recognition for it," James said simply. "Because you don't deserve scraps of my guilt. You deserve actual help, actual support, without the drama or the mess of dealing with me. But I also couldn't live with myself if I did nothing. So that's what I did. I did something, quietly, and I let you rebuild your life." Sarah didn't know what to say to that. "I'm not asking for anything," James continued. "I'm not asking you to forgive me or to let me back into your life or to be involved. But I want to support the kids financially, properly, going forward. I have a job now, solid job, good money, and I want to set up a trust fund for them, for their futures. That's all I want." They met a week later, not at his place or hers, but at a coffee shop in Columbus, neutral territory. James looked different. Older maybe, but cleaner somehow, more present. He brought pictures of the kids from when they were younger, and he cried when he talked about missing their childhoods. He took genuine responsibility for his actions without asking for sympathy. Sarah listened. She didn't forgive him. Forgiveness isn't something you can just give away like a gift. But she acknowledged that he was trying, that he had changed, that he was doing the work. They agreed on child support and a trust fund for each child. They agreed on supervised visits when the kids were ready. They agreed to start slowly. What Sarah realized, in that moment and in the weeks that followed, was that her story had been rewritten. Not because James showed up, but because she had already rewritten it herself. She had taken a job. She had worked hard. She had shown up for her kids every single day, even when it felt impossible. Timothy's job and that donation had been fuel, but Sarah was already the engine. She was already moving forward. James's help was just the wind at her back. The kids met their dad in February, and it was awkward and tender at the same time. Danny was too young to really remember him. Lily was shy. Marcus was angry at first, but James didn't try to fix that anger. He just showed up, he apologized, and he let Marcus feel whatever he was feeling. By spring, Sarah had saved enough money to move to a better apartment, a place with 3 bedrooms instead of 2, a yard where the kids could play, natural light streaming in. She had her first therapy appointment, and then her second, and then her 10th. She was healing in ways she didn't even know she needed healing. The kids started soccer league. Sarah took a weekend shift at the store to pay for it, and she sat on the sidelines watching her kids run around, being kids, and she couldn't stop smiling. It's the next summer now. Sarah is managing the store most days while Timothy semi-retires. She's taking evening classes at the community college to get some business certifications. She's dating again. Nothing serious yet, but the fact that she's even open to it shows how much has changed. She has plans. Real plans. And here's the thing nobody tells you about rock bottom. Sometimes the only way out is through something completely unexpected. Sometimes a job changes everything. Sometimes an act of grace, whether it comes from an old acquaintance or a person from your past, can be the catalyst that sets your life on a different trajectory. But the real magic wasn't in the job or the money or the donation. The real magic was always inside Sarah. It was her refusal to give up even when giving up seemed reasonable. It was her ability to show up for her kids day after day, even when she wanted to collapse. It was her willingness to accept help when it came. That's the actual story. That's what changed everything. Sarah often thinks about the moment she almost didn't answer that phone call from Timothy. She thinks about how one small yes, one decision to show up at that hardware store, set everything else into motion. She thinks about how we're never really stuck unless we believe we are. How sometimes the door we need to open is the one right in front of us, and we just have to have the courage to turn the handle. These days, if you go to Maple Grove on Main Street and stop by Schulman's Hardware, you might see Sarah behind the counter. She's the one with the bright smile, the one who remembers every customer's name, the one who genuinely cares about helping people find what they need. She's the one who looks like she's exactly where she's supposed to be, because she is. And if her story moves you, if it reminds you that second chances are real and that sometimes kindness does come back around, please subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell. Because there are more stories like this, more moments of grace, more people beating impossible odds. And you're going to want to hear them. Sarah's story didn't end when she got hired at that hardware store. It didn't end when that donation arrived. It's still being written day by day, choice by choice, moment by moment. And her greatest gift isn't the job or the money or the reconciliation with James. Her greatest gift is the future, the one she's building with her own hands, one day at a time.